I'm Carl Brookins. I'm a crime fiction writer and one of the hosts of this program. With me tonight is my co-host, Ellen Hart, who writes the Jane Lawless series. A lot of cooking in that.
Yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
I read an interesting book the other day called The Proof is in the Pudding. It's also a murder mystery. I have to tell you a little more about it sometime. It was quite interesting. Our third co-host, Kent Kruger, who writes the marvelous series about northern Minnesota, the Cork O'Connor series, could not be with us for this program, but we'll soldier on anyway. And as you say, he's probably here.
He's here in spirit.
He's here in spirit anyway. Yeah. So how's your life? How have things been going since last time we met in this dark studio?
Well, just found out from my editor in New York that I will be getting revisions for revisions.
Revisions,
could be visions, for a book that I turned in January and that will be out next fall called The Cruel Ever After.
We figured out it's what, the 15th?
I think it's the 16th or 17th in the series.
Really? Wow. That's
Can't remember.
Great.
Yeah.
Are you excited about it?
Yeah, I am about this book.
Well, it's one of the interesting things that I've noticed since I've known you is that even though it is the 16th, and you wrote 16th Jane Lawless, but you also wrote some others with Sophie Greenway, and so you're up in the 20s someplace. And you've been doing
25, yeah.
You still get pretty excited when a new book comes out.
I do if I really like the book. You know, I think if you've written that many books, there are some that you're going to like more than others. And this is one I really like.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. You want to give us the...
Down and dirty?
Well, I don't like that phrase so much. Give us the elevator description, as we say.
I'm not very good at those. Jane Lawless, who is the main character, in the first chapter, a man shows up at her restaurant and says, essentially, I need to see her. And the woman at the desk says, well, she's in a meeting right now. And he says, it's okay, she'll see me, I'm her husband.
Really?
And if you know the series and if you know Jane Lawless at all, it seems impossible because, number one, to our knowledge, she's never been married, and number two, she's gay. So there's sort of no reason she'd have a husband.
That's amazing.
So it just
quite a turn
continues
of
from there.
Was she drunk? Well, we don't want to reveal all
no,
that
it's a simple story.
Readers are going to have to wait till it comes out.
Yes.
That's great. That's wonderful.
And what about you?
I'm very excited to read it. Well, I have. I'm in the throes of finishing an international thriller that I currently call Red Sky, which is the Michael Tanner, Mary Whitney, set in the British Virgin Islands. That's why it's international. It doesn't really international. I mean, they're not running around the world, but it's a sailing mystery like the others. And my second Jack Marston book called Reunion will come out. I went to, for years, my wife and I have gone to her reunions. I don't go to my high school reunions, but she came from a small town in South Dakota, and we go to her reunions, sometimes all class reunions, and they're really fun and they're really interesting, but they're also very different, partly because they're in a real small town. And I thought, what if, this game we play, what if there was something not under the carpet, but behind the scenes at thing, and suddenly people start to show up dead.
Yeah.
So
it's a serendipity, of writing. I went to my class reunion a while back. I think it was my 40th, and ended up with a sort of a semi-stalker.
Did you really?
Yes, at the same time I was writing a book about a stalker. So class reunions can be...
Something about art following reality.
I don't know,
reality
yeah.
following it. It's very different. Well, we're going to have a really interesting guest with us in just a few minutes, and her name is Ani Sorenson. She's from a little bit north of us here in Anoka, and she is a part owner of a bookstore called J. O'Donohue Books. And so we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with our first guest, Ani Sorenson. back, and sitting next to me is our guest, Ani Sorenson. You are the co-owner of J. O'Donohue Books in Anoka.
Yes.
And let's do a little history. That bookstore's been around a lot longer than any of us here at this table have.
40 years.
Well, I'm a little older than that. 40 years, huh? Ah. And how long have you and John had it?
John and I have owned it almost 4. It'll be 4 in July.
So why did you want to be a bookstore owner?
You know, it's funny because I didn't really want to be a bookstore owner.
Oh.
I loved bookstores. I've always loved bookstores. My former boss wanted me to be a bookstore owner. And when he passed away, John and I got together and were looking into businesses to possibly buy. We were thinking maybe a coffee shop. We weren't really sure. And just so happened that my favorite bookstore in the whole world was for sale. And I felt like it was fate.
Yeah.
So we bought
Beckoning
it.
you, yeah.
Yes.
So do you have a background in bookstore ownership?
None.
None. John?
None.
Wow. So you...
So did Gene walk you through the old owner walk you through everything you need to do?
Not so
No.
Not so much.
Okay.
No, we walked it. We bought a cat. That's what we did. That was
see.
our bookstore
Every bookstore has
preparation. We thought, well, we sat down and we thought, what is it about our favorite bookstores that we love the most?
Sure.
And what is it about our favorite bookstores that we don't love the most?
Okay.
And we decided that
And the answer in both cases was cats.
Well, no, I mean, what were the answers?
the answers were, the things that we loved the most were fairly intangible. The smell of
Yeah.
the bookstore,
Yeah.
the feel when you walk through the door, the cat.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier to look at the things that we didn't like about bookstores. And
What didn't you like?
we didn't like the fact that oftentimes, and I'm not trying to discount my fellow bookstore owners
course
because
not.
they're
Oh,
wonderful
no.
people and I love them very much, but they tend to be sometimes fairly grumpy when people walk in and have odd requests or...
We know a few people like
Yeah,
that.
grumpy
don't we?
retailers aren't
Grumpy
really a
retail.
good mix.
Right. So, and being, both of us have been passionate readers our whole lives. We've known each other since we were kids. To walk into a bookstore and to say to a bookstore owner, I'm not sure who wrote it and I'm not sure what the title is, but can you help me find this book?
It had a red cover.
Right. And they're probably wrong, it was probably green. So we decided that we really wanted to make sure that when people walked in with questions like that, that we went out of our way to make sure that we were able to make their experience in our store as good as possible, as positive. We can't compete with half-price books. We can't compete with Barnes & Noble. But they cannot beat us for customer service. They can't beat us for the experience of if you've come into my store more than a couple times, I know your name, I know what you read, and John's the same way.
That's
if
great.
we don't have a book, we find it.
I got it.
And also the other thing that I didn't like about one of my absolute favorite bookstores, one of the greatest bookstores in the Twin Cities, which is Once Upon a Crime.
We know it fairly
Yeah,
well.
we do.
I know.
We've been there.
And I don't know if you have been in the audience during a reading.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
They, I love them so. They have the most uncomfortable chairs
Yeah.
of any bookstore. And when I go to see people, I usually see people that are fairly popular. I go early. You know.
I got it.
Yeah. So that was the second thing that we did after we bought the cat is we went and found the very best folding chairs that we could
Is that
find.
right?
We have such
Isn't
comfortable
that
chairs.
interesting?
So
That's